Taylor, good to see you. And I'm glad the background came through. I was wondering if you're going to throw up the brand innovators or the good background. So I'm happy to see it here.
I figured I'd stick with it.
Yeah, stick with what's working. So good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Reid Colligan. I am the senior account executive over at LG Ads, based in New York City. There are still a few of us here this day and age, and I work on the East Coast team. And with me today is Taylor Byrnes, Vice President of Media and Marketing Tech. Taylor, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, Brand Innovators, for throwing on just another wonderful event. So we have about 40 minutes today. Taylor and I have a pretty jam-packed schedule, a lot of questions, lots to discuss here. So Taylor, why don't we just kind of jump right into it? Why don't you just discuss your roles, your responsibilities within the team, but also how your team is structured, right? We understand that there's a lot of moving pieces here, maybe how one plays into the other for that larger strategy in terms of investment and planning and everything else.
Yeah, awesome. Glad to. So my team is focused on all things media. How do we bring our brand message out to consumers and effectively drive them to become our customers? And so we structure things across the different media verticals. So I have a direct that manages search, direct that manages aggregators, a direct that manages our mail and email acquisition focused, and another direct focus on our brand media, which spans everything from television to display. And then I have a fifth direct that focuses on the marketing technology and ad tech that powers solutions across all of those tactics. And we put that out separate. So that role is specifically cross-functional. It actually spans beyond just our media capabilities to power additional customer experiences.
That's great. And quick question on that, if you could say which team is kind of growing exponentially, if you could see kind of for now and then into the future.
It depends on the year. And so we pride ourselves on being fluid. And so there is no fiefdoms. We don't set a plan and say this is going to be the budget. We look for opportunities and we celebrate when people are able to find areas to grow efficiently. And also we celebrate when people realize that there's a bigger opportunity outside their space. And so we try to make it, we try to celebrate also when we do have places that shrink. In the current environment, we are heavily pushing our brand. It's super important to make sure that we continue to grow that top awareness within audiences. And so it has been a place where we've always invested and continue to double down in that space.
That's great. I love to hear it. And you've spent 11 years plus at Liberty Mutual. Why don't you tell us just a little bit about your personal journey, but also how Liberty Mutual has evolved over the 11 years?
I know when you say 11 years, it makes me realize how long it's been, but it's been a fun
I love
ride.
it.
And so I actually joined the company not through our marketing organization. I came in more of a consulting role. And so I worked on strategic projects across the organization and distribution in our product group, a little bit in our more technical IT functions. And then I found the right path over to marketing. And I've been there for the past little 8+ years. And my journey in marketing has kind of been, similar to our company's journey. Obviously, Liberty Mutual has been around for a long time. We're a 100+-year-old company. But when I joined the marketing group, we were we outsourced a lot. And so we relied on external agencies and partners to do a lot of our media, our creative, our analytics and measurements. And starting back then, we started on our journey to say, what should we do in-house? And so it's not everything. You have agencies that are experts for that part. So we said, where does it make sense? Where do we think we get a competitive advantage or an efficiency from having that operation in-house? So over the time, we brought things in-house. Data and analytics, first we brought in, you have to be close to that to understand where your media buys are making sense and to have the business knowledge to be able to inform even the models that are powering those decisions. Second was around digital, started lower funnel with search and then moved up as we went, where we really found the proximity to the business and the evolving understanding of who our customers are became really important to be close to the people executing those buys in terms of how we're reaching those folks. And it's an evolving process where we go through and we constantly work to say what makes sense to rely on external partners who are experts in their space and what makes sense to continue to build out that expertise in-house.
No, that's great. I mean, I think the advantages there is obviously, being able to control the brand, messaging, and everything else by bringing it in-house, and also relying on other partners, right? There's experience all throughout the industry, and, times are changing almost every single day. There's new ad tech, there's new data possibilities. So it's always good just to kind of partner up with different players and just kind of see how they help push your KPIs.
And also,
Um,
I will
Go
also
ahead.
like, insurance is complex, and so understanding who our customers are, like it's hard to build that up. And we're all still learning about it, even for those of us that sit inside the walls of the company. And so being able to build on that, empower like media and marketers that they don't have to be like actuarial experts, but an understanding of the business becomes really powerful in making sophisticated media decisions.
And on that, how do you learn, right? What's your process of understanding, and if something new comes about, what's your kind of process of, aside from just reading, just talking to a lot of partners and just deep dives?
I think it depends. I guess I sit in like the juncture where I have to lean in both internally and externally. As we all know, like media is an ever-changing world. So we work with our agency partners, we work with our media partners to help keep us informed, of what is changing. But it's also important to understand like what's changing in our internal operations, and like that becomes equally as challenging to be able to go in and lean into the changes in our distribution network. What are we doing to change our online sales environment? What are we doing as a company to put out more like advanced products that fit the consumers better, but also change our appetite on who we want to target? And so it becomes, you can't go deep on everywhere, but lots of conversations to figure out and make the right connections across the teams to make sure the right folks are collaborating.
Yep. It becomes a pretty complicated industry pretty quickly, especially this day and age. So obviously, COVID-19 pandemic has put a lot of strain, in the economy in terms of behavior. Insurance is, as we just mentioned, very, very complex, very competitive, right? So can you talk just maybe holistically about the biggest obstacles, facing the insurance business right now? Obviously, driving behavior has totally changed. And then maybe, how you're kind of moving where the puck will be and saying, hey, we understand this today. How do we hedge against this in the future? But how are we also going to make sure, that sales are strong and that our partners are giving us the best opportunity?
Yeah. And so, I mean, I'm sure we've all felt the changes over the past year and a half, where we've seen in our own lives, like things change, your driving habits, your commuting habits, like where you work. And then we're in the business of like predicting the future. So we can look back and say what happened, but I don't think anyone would say that the past year and a half has been exactly predictive of the next year and a half. Like we are going to see difference. And so that's a challenge when we say we want to understand how much people are driving and how do we expect them? Where do we go through so that we can offer our customers and our prospective customers the most competitive price that they can get? And so like that is a challenge that we see. We also see differences out there that impact our business in terms of the supply chain. Like we all heard of the chip shortage, and that means less people are able to buy new cars. That usually sparks an insurance shopping decision. But even little things like the used car parts. If anyone has a used car out there, like now is probably a good time to sell if you don't need it, because with the limitations on new cars, we've seen the prices for used cars go up substantially. And for us in the business, we protect our clients. And so if they get in an accident, it's not their problem that like new car is more expensive. We want to make them whole. And so we have to account for that in our business.
And how do you think that plays into, your creative messaging and just in terms of overall strategy, right? Understanding that, auto is it's still a strong focus, but understanding that the market's totally changed. And now you're having to focus in on, more home. Can you talk about, how that affects your media modeling and how you're trying to move forward from that?
Well, I think it like obviously there is like a dynamic where we are a multi-line carrier. We want to fit all of the insurance, like all of our clientele's need, and that's a benefit versus I guess some competitors that focus more solely on the auto line, or at least more dominant. But also like our value prop is lived and felt within. Like we customize your coverage so you only pay for what you need. And so like our sales process is built around understanding how that like person's insurable like life is changing. What are their future needs? How has that changed over time? And so like I guess our value prop that we have had and that we continue to deliver continues to be really relevant in the current dynamic environment.
Yep. No, I totally agree. It's a very diversified business you all have. So when one might falter, you have other ways to pick it up, which I think is vastly important. I think and a big learning that we've all discovered here. In terms of people, bandwidth, right? People are emailing you all the time, trying to ask for meetings. How have you and your team adjusted to kind of this work-life balance, but also trying to stay ahead of the market, trying to understand what's going on? Can you talk a little bit about how you might have tweaked a little bit internally to make sure that, your people are not spending tons of time, hours and hours and hours on maybe some tasks that are less important and focusing on the road ahead?
Yeah, I'd say we've discovered over the pandemic and how effective work from home can be. I think people can be really productive, and we have technologies like this that can allow interactions. And we've seen how that played out, where we saw especially people within their network of who they need to work with being super effective, even in a fully virtual remote state. But we have noticed also that there can be a drift. And so you get less of those interactions outside of the folks that you need to do your core work. So how often will the folks doing search interact with the folks that are working on our YouTube campaigns? That starts to drift. And those connections also produce valuable insights over time. And so we've been thoughtful, and also just the broad connections where people are focused on their day-to-day and don't get the full connection to how we are running as a business. So we've tackled kind of both those things independently. One, we've had a structured approach to more cross-functional, smaller meetings where you put people together that are outside of their core domain so that they can build that interconnectivity and hopefully spark some good ideas. But even if they don't, just having that connectivity is valuable, where they can see folks outside of just folks that work on a day-to-day basis. The second is connectivity to the broader business. I used to have a smaller meeting with my leadership team to go over our monthly business results. We broadened that to everyone involved in media. It's optional, come in, but that way they can join in. If they have insights, they can, but if not, they can have that connectivity to the work that we're doing and how it's rolling up to the bigger picture. We've gotten really good feedback for those things. They hit various purposes, but I think it's both play an important part.
Yeah, and I think, go ahead.
I say your last question around time. I know we've chatted before, people's time is their most valuable asset. We talk about budget, we want to spend our budget in the most intelligent way possible, but people only have so much time, and we're all trying to strike the right work home balance. And so that's where we've been really focused on making sure that we don't do meeting overload, that we prioritize the work that'll make the biggest differentiator, and that folks are really paying attention to the things that will move the needle, and we try to remove the distractions.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. And I think for, us and all the publishers out there, I think it's about talking to the right people and really getting to the value proposition, right? It's basically getting to the point and kind of have everything tied up. RFPs, RFIs are all focused in on, multiple strategies and how they ultimately play and, to basically, moving forward, moving products. So with that understanding, there's a lot of moving pieces within the business, understanding that, we're here to talk about beyond linear, and streaming is a huge focus. Can you talk to us just, in the last year or two, how your media strategy has changed, and then looking forward to the next year, 2 years, 5 years out, how have you all pivoted? You obviously are a very, very large linear upfront player, strong digital player, but as we move into the streaming world, tell us your thought, how you're planning out, most importantly, what you value as success, right? Because there's a lot of metrics out there. Delivery is one of them, but it's also just, understanding of how you move forward and how you're evaluating partners.
Yeah, so I'll start with the end goal. The end goal is we deploy our media to drive the most profitable new business customers into our funnels. And so we want to do that. And that's how do they convert? And then we want to have customers stick around for a long lifetime. And so the goal is to use those dollars in the most impactful way to bring people to our company. How we do that varies. There's a lot of indicators that lead up to that end result. And so we go through, we look at what the cost per quote is, what the delivery is, what the reach is, what the incremental reach is, what the incremental frequency is. There's a lot of what the audience quality, the audience segments are within each media partner. So there's a lot of underlying things that we look at that we either can stack up or that we know are directional indicators of that end value chain. But at the end of the day, we have a budget we're deploying, and our goal is to create the most value for the org in that. And the value for the org is bringing customers to the front door.
Can you talk a little bit about
front door?
Yeah, I've got multiple, virtual front doors this day and age. It's every minute's a Zoom meeting. Can you talk a little bit about, consumer behavior and how that's changed in the insurance world, and how obviously you want to, employ the largest net to get them in your front door. But can you talk a little bit about how marketers would be able to reach your exact audience, given that, consumption inside of insurance and outside of insurance has just fully changed?
Yeah, we've seen like probably the biggest consumption shifts in the video space with like the increase in streaming consumption. So it's an area that we have been in for years and focused on testing. And I think we're glad to reap the benefits of that, because as we saw like the trend increase over the past year and a half, we felt comfortable with allowing our investments to shift where we saw the audience, because we had a structured approach prior to that, saying like, how do we go through, how do we measure the value, how do we look at the audience? And I say that like it's not static, it's constantly changing. Like our learnings from a year and a half ago, like they're good, but as you well know, this space is rapidly changing. And so the fundamentals are the same, but how that is being received out in the market and how consumers are tapping into the ever-changing world of content that can appear on their screens, like it's our collective challenge to try to stay ahead of that and understand where it is.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes total sense. And like we said before, you guys are a very diversified brand and always looking ahead, which it seems like you guys are always kind of one step ahead of the curve and moving into new territory.
And we've seen also the change in how consumers want to interact with us. Like as they've gone through, we've seen an increase in digital first, like they want to come through, and then we've also seen an increase in like SMS adoption, and so our goal is to be where customers want to be, to interact and make it easy for them. If they want a solely online experience, like we want to provide that in the easiest way so that they can like secure their policy or service their policy in the form that works for them.
Yep. No, it's about how brands interact with your brand, right? And having that personal touch. I think customer service, personal touch, making sure that they feel loved and appreciated. And, you get to control the experience there. And I think one other aspect too, in terms of the shifting world, is incremental reach, right? It's obviously, we understand the linear marketplace has its challenges with, bottom line, subscribers and that the shift to streaming. How are you kind of positioning incremental reach as you move forward?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's hugely important. We're a mass reach brand. Like we want to go out there, and if we have blind spots, we want to be able to fill them in. And so that becomes the challenge to say, like, it's not that linear is gone, but it is smaller than it used to be. And so we are all over saying, how do we react to that? How do we make sure we're finding that audience? Who is that audience? And how can we most effectively reach them in the environments where they're consuming media, particularly video? We tend to focus on video because it allows us the latitude to get our brand message across and really make an impact on consumers.
Yep, no, that makes absolute sense. And where would you kind of put, connected TV within your funnel, right? Obviously it changes, depending on your target, but if you could kind of just look at it holistically, where would you place it within your strategy?
So it is predominantly focused on generating awareness. You want to be top of mind with consumers. And so, but I would say with our presence, it's not about introducing them, it's staying constantly top of mind. And that's where we want our video and connected TV assets to work, where we're reminding folks on a continual basis of our value proposition, so that when life happens, when something sparks that insurance shopping moment, like we're already there. We've been in front of them through the content that they're consuming, and we're top of mind, so they think to come to us to get a quote.
And being that, cost per quote is arguably your largest KPI, right? That's kind of what you're looking for. How are you optimizing, to make sure that you're getting the most bang for your buck on every single dollar spent?
So, I mean, I guess I will say we do look at cost per quote. At the end of the day, we care if that customer buys a policy, but we tend to go up on cost per quote, just especially as an indicator across media, because you get like a lot of volume there. But we are always focused on measurement. Measurement was never easy, and even with the increasing technology availability, it still becomes like an ongoing challenge. And so we don't rely on one source of measurement. We do our own media mix modeling. We do people-based measurement tests. We do incremental reach tests. We try to focus on a variety of things so that we can triangulate an answer to be able to look back and say we feel comfortable with this investment is returning where it needs to be.
And aside from, like we said, cost per quote, but how are you evaluating, all your KPIs in terms of, can you talk to us about research studies that you're doing? Like, what do you look at that you can definitively say, you know what, I believe that this moved the needle. This was a great investment. What can you talk to us a little bit maybe about partners that you're partnering up with, or just like certain aspects of research that you say, you know what, definitively, I feel very good about this. This is where we want to move forward.
So, I mean, there's things what you can do to measure, and there's things that you can do at scale. We like at the end of the day, incremental sales are going to be what moves the needle. But I'm not like foolish enough to say that each type of media is going to work in the same way. It's if you're doing search, you get sales that day. You're doing video, you're not going to get sales that same day. So our challenge is to control for the differences in like the level of impact that a piece of media will have on that end outcome, which our end outcome is we spend that to drive prospects to us to become our customers. And so how we approach that, I think some of the ways that we love are when we can do like test control, based on anonymized data or first party data, because then you can go through, and if you do it correctly, you can truly measure the incremental impact of a media investment on our operation.
And on that, how are you kind of working with your first party, third party data? And then also in terms of, are you partnering with any kind of new data technology partners that really helps you kind of figure out your media strategy and make sure that, again, that you're kind of getting the most value for your media?
Yeah, so Ashley, this past year, we've set up a CDP internally to allow us to take advantage. Like as an insurance company, we collect a ton of first party data. And so by, I guess, and I don't want to say that we're like at the end stage of that, we're somewhere in the middle of that process, but it allows us to take advantage of that first party data in an environment where cookies are becoming less and less reliable.
And in terms of, so you're saying it's a little bit of a work in progress. It's towards the end on that stage. How do you envision, using that first party data with partners? What would you like to see in terms of, are you kind of looking for them to ingest it and then they say, hey, match my audience? Or are you trying to get very granular? Kind of what's your goal there?
It's TBD. It's where we can make the most value. And so we don't want to, I guess it depends on what the partner is and where it sits in like the funnel and where we can get the value from it. I guess we take our media as an approach. Like sometimes you have sledgehammers, sometimes you have like carpentry hammers, sometimes you have a scalpel. And like you don't want to use a scalpel for a sledgehammer's job. You don't want to use a sledgehammer for a scalpel's job. And so we go through, and the idea is it doesn't all have to work. We have to figure out what it is and what we can use to make the most value. And I think what we have to be cautious of is taking first party data and inserting it too much into a mass reach vehicle when it's not what it's meant to be. But if you can use that to work around the edges, or you can use that to heavy up on a truly valuable audience, like that's where you can unlock a lot of power.
Yeah, and we're seeing a lot of partners onboarding their first party data, and I think that's a huge benefit of the data technology world this day and age, is that especially in the LG world where we can import it and then we can find mass scale, mass reach within it, and then again we can move across the funnel, and then it's not just CTV video, but then you can kind of complete your mobile strategy as well, right? So you can kind of move further down the funnel.
Exactly. Figuring out where it's worth it to interconnect all those things, or where it's worth it to heavy up. And sometimes it's everywhere, sometimes it's a component, but I think it all has the potential to make all of our buys more sophisticated.
Yeah, and I think that's the name of the game, is right, is you guys are obviously playing in the mass reach, but then as soon as you're kind of continuously finding a customer throughout the funnel, you want to make sure that they're being followed up, with desktop, mobile, tablet, understanding they can drive to site. So in terms of very competitive insurance world, how are you sticking out, right? It's very fragmented, content on every screen. Consumers are watching content on every single screen. What are you doing to stick out in the very competitive space?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess hopefully we've had them out for a few years, but our brand ambassadors, Limu and Doug, do a great job of pushing out our brand awareness and being highly recognizable within the category, despite the fact that they're still relatively new. They've only been around for 2 years. It feels like longer, but actually they're relative newcomers on the, I guess, the brand ambassadors.
I love them. I laugh every time.
I saw there was an SNL skit where they made I guess a fake Doug made an appearance this weekend with some other commercial actors, and I think that picks up the impact that they are having out there, just in terms of their impact on like pop culture seeping in. But I think you combine that with our brand message. We customize your coverage so you only pay for what you need. We're not trying to give you the cheapest policy. We're trying to give you the best price, most competitive policy to protect the assets you've earned. And I mean, these are important things. They're people's cars, homes. They want to have the right coverage, and we want to give them the most competitive price. And so we are consistent in putting out that message across all of our campaigns. And then the other thing that I will think that's I guess maybe it should be well noticed, but the importance of audio in all this, and the importance of audio and video. I'm sure you've all heard our jingle out there, and we think of video as a very visual aspect, and it is, but the audio components are hugely important in this distracted world. And so we have that out there where people are multitasking, and if they aren't paying full attention, we still are able to grab them in with that Liberty jingle, and it drives that recognition subconsciously into their mind.
That's makes sense. I mean, I love the commercials, and I was exploring maybe a potential Halloween costume at a certain point in time. So it might be next year. I'll send you a picture of it. Yeah, maybe you guys have a costume that you can send my way, and I'll put
exactly. Maybe we can work something out.
Exactly. I'll be the emu. It's fine. That's cool. In terms of 2022, tell us what excites you, right? What are you most excited about? What are you kind of seeing in the marketplace that you're looking at and you're saying, you know what, this could have a lot of potential?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the video landscape is exploding in terms of opportunities, and that becomes really exciting to be able to dive in and say what matters, but also really complex in terms of making sure you don't get distracted on the wrong things. Back to your early point, how do you make sure you test the right things? How do you know that they're working? And how do you do that with I'll say the right, I don't want to say minimal effort, but the right amount of effort versus the opportunity. And so I'd say that's, and there's increased data, increased technology to be able to stitch all these things together. And so it's my fear and my excitement all at once, because there's so much opportunity to do great work and to make our media dollars work harder. But there's also opportunity to increase the complexity and the workload on the folks. And we want them to focus on the things that can produce the most value and not be overwhelmed or distracted by too much work.
Makes sense. Makes total sense. So we have about 10 minutes left. I'm being inundated with a bunch of great questions here. So I think we might jump into a few of them. The first is, does your OEM strategy include leveraging ACR data to suppress certain audiences to help minimize duplication? Plays right into my world. So
yeah, so we do roll that out. And I think ideally, it's not just, there is some suppressing, but it's also understanding that to control the ad experience. How do you give them the right amount? You don't want to just frequency cap, but you want to understand what they're viewing, and are we able to deliver the right additional ad experiences to drive them to the optimal decision point. And then I know I topped on the first, it's easy in theory. The reality is challenging when you get into what are your blind spots, what aren't your blind spots, and that goes beyond even just the ACR device versus the holistic media campaigns, where we also have blind spots.
Yep. No, the capabilities are endless. Obviously, that's what we do at LG Ads over here is looking at ACR data, understanding who's been not exposed, but also more importantly, who's been underexposed, right? Understanding that Liberty Mutual is frequency is a large part of your strategy, right? One ad doesn't really do anything. It's making sure that somebody's been exposed the right amount of times, and again across different platforms, right? And the ability to control how many you've seen on CTV video, then followed up on cross device is obviously important, and ACR allows that.
Exactly. We don't want people to see 0 Limu and Doug ads, but we don't want them seeing 1 either. I don't want to deny that from the audience.
We don't want that. I want to see as many as humanly possible. That's the name of the game, right? I got to perfect that costume.
Exactly.
Second question from anonymous attendee. What role does creative play in your strategy? Are you measuring creative efficiency beyond pre-testing? If so, how does that impact your media strategy as you tackle cross-screen? Lot to digest there.
Yep. So my team works heavily with our creative counterparts in terms of what creative they're developing and how it's performing on air, as well as effectively aligning our media strategies with making sure that our production timelines and content is aligned. But we do have an extensive pre-market testing process to make sure that we aren't making ads that we don't think will work. And so we try, that is a goal, because once producing ads is expensive. And so if you don't get that right out of the gate, like that's a problem. We also focus on in-market reads across, it varies across the different platforms. We have some stuff that we manage entirely in-house, and we also look at some syndicated data to understand like directionally where should we heavy up and like where should we pull back. But the idea is they should be directional changes at that point, because we've put in through a process to make sure that we're not putting like what we view as misses out onto the air.
Yep. Nope. Makes sense. It's, it's about finding the right creative at the right platform and making sure that it affects well. And it's most importantly, it's a good experience, right? I think we've all seen ads.
And being dynamic enough to, when you have a winner and you get like it right, to being able to plus that up and take advantage of that opportunity.
Yep. Totally agree. Another anonymous attendee. This one's a little heavy in terms of text, but I'm going to try to cut it down for you just a second here. Just trying to do you as many favors as you can. I
appreciate it.
Yeah, always. You send me that outfit, and anything you want.
Yeah.
How are you approaching audiences when buying linear and CTV? Do you view one as a reach extension over the other, or are you looking to reinforce messaging throughout the consumer journey?
So I'd say you can't look at it as a one size fits all, because there are different audiences that consume that. There are people that use linear as a viewing extension. There are people that live like the majority of their video like lifestyle or consumption in linear. And so I don't think it's a one size fits all approach. I will say with our creative, we're more focused on the screen that you're watching it on and the ad experience than like whether that's streaming or linear TV. Because if people are consuming, there are differences, but we're not trying to put like a timeline component to it in terms of first we're going to get you 3 times on linear and then 4 times over in streaming. Like that's not how it like plays out for an evergreen, always on advertiser. So we are trying to make sure that we have the right experience for the audience depending on their viewing consumptions.
Yeah, and on that, how are you evaluating demo versus kind of audience? Is this becoming more of a something that you're kind of diving into, or do you still feel like the audience is important, but then also it's fitting within that that age, sex, demo factor?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is like what you transact upon and then what you get, and like what you go through. And so like when you transact in linear, like you may pick a demo, but that doesn't mean that's the only folks you're getting. And so I view you want to transact upon something that's going to drive the right end outcome, and that's everything. And depending on the nature of what you're buying, it could be that what you're transacting is what you're getting, or it could be that you're transacting upon something that's an agreed upon currency and you get a lot more. You have to understand both, but the end result is to have the media dollars work the best to surround the audience at the right frequency and drive the end business's decision.
Makes total sense. And interesting question here that I have for you. We shunned away from the audience for a quick second here. If you could solve one problem within the media business, what would it be? I think I know the answer, but I'm curious of what yours is.
Well, I've thought of this. I'm going to answer and then take it back. And so like
not allowed.
Because what I would say is, what I would like, ideally you want a holistic holistic view of everything that's happening, so that you can find people across all screens and devices to make that like informed decision of the best place to reach them and not have any blind spots. And I say I take it back because I want that selfishly for me. I don't want that to be a syndicate, because then you lose the competitive advantage. And there is a value out there when, as soon as you serve up the solution to everyone, like you lose some of the ability to be smarter and to like work around a more complicated ecosystem to truly drive value. And so, well, I would like that if it's available to everyone, it takes some of the fun out of being able to work through imperfect data to be smarter than other folks, or at least to hope we're smarter than other folks.
First of all, I love that answer. That's, and when we find it, we'll just give it to you. We won't give it to anybody else, right?
Then you'll get the Limu cost.
Done. This is recorded, so you have that. That's on file right there. So like we'll consider this like a little bit of a talk show, right? We'll be a host here. What do you want to plug, right? What's something that you're excited about, from the brand? Like take a minute or two and talk about something that's kind of upcoming that, you know, we can kind of sink ourselves into and help you kind of promote that message regardless of the screen?
Well, I guess it's I guess I'm taking a little bit of a cheat card because I'm going outside of my exact domain where I spoke about some of the media stuff that I'm excited about. And we spoke about Limu and Doug. We do have a really exciting like Limu and Doug integration coming up. It should be out later this month, where I love seeing just the two of them on screen. I get a kick out of, I'm close to it, but I get a kick out of their adventures. They will be joined by a superhero who will be tapping in to give Limu and Doug a little bit of backup in their mission to customize coverage so people only pay for what they need. And so for those of you out there, in the next couple of weeks, be on the lookout for a high flying, I guess you can probably guess, depending, there's one major superhero movie coming out in the next month or a month or so, but super excited to see that work come to life.
That is very exciting. I have a guess of who it is, but I'm not going to spoil it. You know, I want to make sure we didn't sign any NDAs before this, so I want to make sure that, you know, a little.
I think I've given it up. People could probably do a quick Google search. And besides, I actually appreciate the fact that people may be out there searching for it now. They'll be excited when they see that Limu and Doug commercial hit the screen.
That's what it's all about. You're going to just see an absolute spike. That's the name of the game. Is this a strategy that you see, you know, moving forward? And Justin's about to cut me off. So is this a strategy that we can expect from you moving forward? Partners can align, you know, thematically with context and content and say, hey, this is coming out. We would actually like, you know, to figure out this is the audience that wants it and that strategy moving forward.
I think it's where it makes sense. Like when we can go through, we want to make sure that we don't want our brand to take a back seat, but we can integrate and make like the sum of the two hopefully be greater. Like then like that is a huge benefit. And we also, it gets back to time. And I mean, my time and like the production team time in terms of we want to make sure that we invest our production dollars in things that have enough weight to make it worth it. And so when those things align, and we think that there's a creative construct that really like will drive the brand forward and drive the messaging forward and draw the audience in, then it ends up being like a win-win.
Perfect. Well, I know that I'm going to, you know, after this call, follow up with some potential, you know, heavy moviegoers perhaps, and send you a plan on that. So shameless plug from us over here.
Worth it.
Thanks, guys. I jumped in. You caught me. I jumped in that short breath you took, Reid. But I'm glad you guys spoke about that last bit as well. I think it's been, again, another really great conversation. And I think that one of the things that I heard you guys talk about is that, you know, as we kind of grow this space, we're all in this together, really kind of need to be partners on both sides of the table to really kind of improve what we're doing for the consumer. And so I think that, you know, we take that into my account all the time, you know, and trying to be good partners to our advertisers like you, Taylor, and you guys obviously in turn share a ton of learning back with us that really kind of keeps that virtuous cycle or that flywheel moving. So thank you for your time, Taylor. Cannot thank you enough. Really was fantastic. Reid, great job. Good to see you always.